everybody, and welcome back to Feeling Seen, the podcast that talks about the movies that make us feel seen. My name, obviously, is Jordan Crucchiola, and my co-host, as always, we kind of, we bury the lead a little bit in our introductions, and my co-host today, you might have seen her on the show or the film, Dear White People. You might have also seen the movie Bad Hair. You might have also seen the show Grand Crew, where she has popped up, or you could have watched her program Hello Cupid, and now she has got a new podcast is in its second season. Not necessarily a new podcast, but it's in its second season. And so, Ashley Blaine Featherson-Jenkins, tell us about your podcast. And me and you were sort of peers in the conversation space, if I may be so bold as to say so.
Thank you so much, Jordan. My podcast is, I am talking to people about, I guess, feeling seen at points in their lives, of course. But the crux of the podcast is really, we're chatting about the journey. I want to know how people have gotten to where they are. I want to know, and all the things that happen in the in-between, right? Like the good stuff, the bad stuff, the peaks, the valleys, because for me, that's where inspiration lies. That's where the real story is. I think oftentimes we celebrate the highlight reel, right? Like we're celebrating,
the Instagram grid version.
The Instagram grid, the awards that people are getting, all those things. But I know, just based on my journey and the journeys that I've heard of countless other people, that like there were so many things that led them there that actually were even more so important than the accolades they ended up getting. So that's what it's all about. And, the hope is that we're inspiring over at my podcast, Trials to Triumphs, that we are.
Trials to Triumphs. It's on the OWN podcast network.
Yes,
correct?
It's a sister podcast, like the Oprah Winfrey podcast and Super Soul Sunday. So I'm hoping that we're inspiring people. We are encouraging people to go after their dreams, and we're allowing people to have a brighter perspective over their lives.
And a thing that you do on your podcast that I've noticed is you open up with icebreaker questions.
Yeah.
So I wanted to come in with an icebreaker of my own. What is a movie villain you have really identified with?
Ooh, that's good. So I'm going to start off by saying I'm realizing and thinking about this that I don't really gravitate toward villains. Like I'm not into the villain stories per se, but this is crazy. The first thing that popped into mind was Charlize Theron in Monster as Eileen Wuornos. But here's, I'm flipping it on its head, right? Because I think the movie's brilliant. I think that she's fantastic in it. But the reason I'm choosing it is because I think that the whole point of the movie is that the world and her community villainized this woman.
Yeah.
She was villainized. We were, the movie is even called Monster. They were calling her a monster, right? But when you peel back the layers and when you really get into her story and her trauma and what she's been through,
God.
I'm there's a part of me that's I get it though. I actually, and I feel really bad about the fact that nobody took care of her. And yes, this is a life that some of us could say that she chose, but what other life would she have actually lived? You know what I mean? When you look at what her life was. So that was the first thing that popped into my head. And I like to kind of go with my first mind.
Have you, because I've had folks on this podcast talk, and we've talked a bit about sort of the journey in their lives of really coming to accept and embrace being the hero of their own story and struggling with feeling like a supporting character in their narrative. So have you, if not feeling aligning with the frequency of the villains, have you comfortably felt like the hero of your story, or do you have a bit of a supporting character mindset at all in your life?
That's a great question, actually, Jordan. I in my life, I do feel like the hero in my life's journey and in my life story, right? I have a very leading lady quality to myself. You know what I mean? I always have. Not bossy, but I I know who I am. I know what I want. I know what I'm talking about. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm coming with the facts to the table. I like forming community. I like helping others, all of these things. I think the spaces that I felt like the supporting characters are because other people are putting me there. It's not because I'm putting myself there. And that's what makes it frustrating. Even sometimes as an actor, I'm like, I'm a leading lady.
Yeah.
I'm not always a supporting character. You know what I mean? Like I have a lot of appreciation for the supporting characters. I think supporting characters are fantastic. I've played many, many, many supporting characters over my career. And it's a special position, but there also comes a time when but I'm the lead too. So I think that it's the frustration sometimes of being like, don't you see what I see? Like,
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm not crazy, right?
No, the chip on my shoulder is that I don't understand when people don't see my value for exactly what I goddamn know it is. And I'm like, what is your problem?
Okay, we're the same person.
Perfect. I am in a constant joyful pursuit of becoming the best and better version of myself because that is so exciting and so satisfying to me. But it's like, but on the way, guys, there's also a lot here. I'm really just wondering why you're not getting the fundamental goodness here. So I align with that a lot.
I love that. And Jordan, and it's frustrating. But the other thing too is that it's also inevitable. Like everybody can't get it.
Yeah.
How could they?
Yeah. You're right.
Everybody can't get it. And so it makes it really special when you find your people or the people who do. It just feels like it's you can take the deepest exhale. Yeah.
Well, I will get us to the characters to discuss today, and you have brought a couple.
Yeah.
And we have Kyla Pratt's Breanna from the sitcom One-on-One, and Charnel Brown's Kimberly Reese from A Different World, the sort of evolution off the Cosby Show, following Denise off into college. And I was reading an interview where you were talking about putting you and Lena Waithe coming together and sort of just taking your visibility into your own hands and being like, listen, I'm not seeing what I want to see of people, just women like us, Black women, just in their 20s, living successfully or striving or trying to be successful, but taking care of themselves and doing all right. And you reference too that there being this lull between the creative period I think we're seeing now with the Lena Waithes and the You and the Issa Raes, and then this sort of gap in the very culturally, emotionally fallow 2000s. But comes off of this period of the late or 90s, really, the early to late 90s into the early 2000s, where there's this incredible bloom of Black film and television. And so I wanted to hear from you about the experience of 90s TV, just sort of as an entity, as we get into the specifics of these characters.
Yeah, when I look back at the 90s, and I'll even push it again into the early 2000s, because that's when I was watching One-on-One and A Different World, really. I started watching One-on-One. I think I was in high school. Yeah, because we were both in high school at the same time, both the character and I. And then A Different World, I binge watched before I went to college.
Oh.
So this is all happening between 2000 and 2005, let's just say 2000. This is all, I'm getting all of this content. But even when I look back just on the 90s, especially, I remember not having to search for myself on TV.
Right.
And when I say we, I mean myself, my family, my sister, my mom, my dad, my grandmother. We were all somewhere on TV.
TGIF included Family Matters. There was Step by Step and Family Matters back to back. And my after school show was just hanging with Mr. Cooper.
Yeah. The way you said it was just hanging with Mr. Cooper. Yeah.
That's both literally and emotionally just hanging with Mr. Cooper.
We had a Martin. We had so many shows. We had Half and Half. We just had so many shows. Girlfriends, that was a little bit later, but obviously the Steve Harveys, the Jamie Foxx, Bernie Mac. We had all of those shows too. I just say that to say, even on like dramas and stuff, like on like, you know, network dramas, there were always Black people on them. Like we were just there.
Yeah.
We were a part of the world. We were main characters. We were supporting characters. So growing up, I didn't feel like, oh man, like I just really wish there was some representation for me as a little Black girl. Like I had it.
Yeah.
It wasn't until, so then I go to college in 2005. I feel like 2005 to 2009, it was a big reality TV boom. Like it was it was a big reality TV time. And so that was kind of that. And like, it was diminishing, right? Like it was diminishing. It wasn't what it was in the 90s and the early 2000s. It's diminishing. I moved to Los Angeles. Hopefully I'm not moving too ahead for you.
No. Okay. Do please travel.
So I moved to LA in 2010. So I'm trying to give everyone a timeline of like what's happening. So I'm seeing myself as a girl in the 90s, in the early 2000s. And I'm like binging A Different World and watching One-on-One and all of these great shows before I go off to college. Then I get
Living
to college.
Single existed before Friends.
Exactly. Exactly. I'm like, you know, then I go to college and like, I was in college, so I guess I didn't have as much time to like be all up on the TV like I was before. But, you know, I was still watching TV, but, you know, and my intention, I went to Howard University and got a BFA in musical theater, but my plan was always to move to Los Angeles and pursue film and television first. I still want to do the stage. My heart is on the stage. My beginnings are in theater, but I knew I was going to move to LA and do film and television. But when I got here, I moved to LA 8 months after I graduated from college. So I'm here February 2010. I'm like, you know, excited to hit the ground running. I'm like, yes, okay, my opportunities are here. I was like, there isn't, who was the 22-year-old Black girl on TV? There literally, I cannot think if there were, it was like 3, and I can't even tell you, I should be able to tell you who they were right now. There was no young Black woman on TV at that time that I remember being like, oh yeah, like I would love to, like this is and I always have to remind people of this. This is pre How to Get Away with Murder. This is pre-Scandal. This is pre like kind of that boom that ABC and NBC had of kind of those types of dramas. This is way before that. This is
pre-Shonda Rhimes.
This is pre-Shonda Rhimes. It was like, it was a dead zone. There was no, this is even like a Dear White People, like Black kids in college kind of doing it. That wasn't happening. This is pre-Freeform. Like Freeform wasn't making this is like my first co-star, like my first, like the thing that got me into SAG was a co-starring role on a Raven-Symoné show on ABC Family. I think it got canceled after the first season. But my point is like, Raven-Symoné had like a little something. And again, it didn't last a whole season.
Right. And she was legacied in from a child's stardom at an earlier time.
So it kind of doesn't count. Like shout out to Raven, but it doesn't count in the same way. But my point is like, that was the opportunity. And so that is when, you know, shortly after that, I teamed up with my friend Lena Waithe and was like, girl, she was a writer. She is a writer. And at the time was like trying as a young Black queer woman, trying to figure out who cared about her voice. Yeah. And as you know, there was a lull in that too. And so we banded together and just created our own thing, a web series called Hello Cupid.
Where you were getting into like a lot of sorts of conversations around identity and around like the lens on Black women in society before that was becoming de rigueur, as there would be sort of like, I think a capitalistic spurred demand for it in the late 10s, early 2020s as we exist now.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like, I mean, we were definitely like ahead of the game. But I think what I want people to understand is that we were only ahead
white
of the
people
game.
are often following behind, so that makes sense.
Well, there's that. Glad you know that, Jordan. But no, like I think the thing is like, what I want people to know is that we had to be. Yeah. Like we had to be there. I didn't have a choice. Lena and I didn't have a choice. I mean, the choice was just to not do anything. And, you know, it's changed. it's changing, but we still have a long way to go. And I'm talking about 13 years ago that I moved to LA. So, but obviously there's a lot more opportunity. And obviously I've since had opportunities and more has come along. But when I first got here, I was like, damn, this is a bad time to be trying to be, a young Black actress in LA because there isn't anything for me.
And so, like, it's such because it's almost like you said, like, you're still watching TV sometimes when you're in college.
Of course,
but,
yeah.
But at the same time, it's like, we couldn't quite access it then like we can now, like, all of it at our fingertips. So, like, if you're like, kind of, like, stockpiling these things before you go off to college, and then, like, you're watching intermittently as you go, then you're like, I'm going to LA, I've got this stage degree, now, where are my opportunities, everybody? I feel like that's almost like coming out of, like, the Kimmy Schmidt bunker and being like, what the fuck happened? Since I binged A Different World. Like, literally. What happened since I watched One-on-One? What has been going on while I was in college?
I was not prepared.
In Kimberly Reese, we have a character more on the supporting side. And then in One-on-One, we have Breanna, who is, like, front and center. And when I was rewatching I hadn't watched that show in so long, and I rewatched the pilot to talk to you, and I was just like, this isn't outstanding. Like, the introduction that we get to Breanna in that show is so fantastic. And I feel like I know her for the rest of the show now.
I got the grant. Yay! We're going to Nova Scotia for a whole year. Yay! you ain't yaying.
Well, Mom, when you first mentioned this, I looked Nova Scotia up online. And they ain't online.
You know what? There's an endangered species up there. What do you call them? Oh, yeah, black people.
You know, Daddy's right. I should stay here with him.
Oh.
Which daddy said that?
Well, we just said how much we're going to miss each other and that 2 weeks a year isn't enough.
Yeah, but Daddy talk too much.
And you really want to stay here?
Mom, Daddy and I are going to be just fine.
So, like, tell me about those two characters' energies and them comprising a kind of, like, part of your personality.
Yeah, so, okay, I'll start with Breanna. Here's the thing. Like I said, I always wanted to move to LA and basically be Kyla Pratt. Like, that's what I wanted. And so when I saw her, well, I had already been begging my parents to, like, quit their jobs and let me move to LA. And they were like, no.
No. You're from, I believe, around in Maryland, correct?
Yeah, I'm from the DC metropolitan area. Yeah.
Yes.
So anyway, my parents were like, no.
So that's a long trip.
Yeah. Also, like, they were like, we have jobs in a beautiful home here. We're not leaving. And you're going to college. And I was like, fine.
Yeah, they're like, we're not in Glendora, Ashley. We're in DC.
It's crazy. The fact that I was like writing proposals, like really trying to ask them, like convince them to do it. And they were like, no. Anywho. So, when I saw, first of all, One-on-One was on UPN. So UPN had the content. Okay. But when I saw Kyla Pratt as Breanna on One-on-One, I was like, that's it. Like, that's me. Like, it was like the personification of, like, that's who I want to be and that's what I want to do. Like, it was like my example. Like, if you want to know what I want to do, this is it. Like, I want to be the lead on a hilarious sitcom where I'm just living my life, which is essentially kind of years later what we did with Hello Cupid. She's older, obviously, and whatever, but, like, I was so inspired by her. And I saw a lot of myself in her. Like I said, we're around the same age. I think we might be a year apart, if that. And I remember, like, I wrote into her fan club. She had, like, a fan club at that time. That was, like, a big thing people were doing. And I, like, since have met, like, now, like, I know her and she's so kind and we're very supportive of each other's careers. Wonderful. But at the time, she sent me back a black and white signed headshot. And it was so nice. And I think the message, I have it, I would have to find it. But basically the message said, like, Ashley, like, keep going after your dreams. Like, you can do it. And I just really appreciated that. Like, it did more for me at that time. Like, I, like, held on to it. Like, if Kyla Pratt said I can do it, then I can. And, like, look, now I live here and, like, Kyla Pratt's, she's amazing. She's been so, like I said, so supportive of me and kind. And, like, I've reminded her of that moment and she's like, oh my God, like, it's amazing. But anyway, so that's what One-on-One was for me. One-on-One was, like, the life that I was living at that time. It was really inspiring to me.
And that is, for those who might not have watched the show, One-on-One is the story of a young girl, Breanna, who in the pilot episode, she's like visiting her dad for the 2 weeks a year she gets to spend with him. He is a former pro ball player, and he gets, goes down with injuries, so becomes like a sports news broadcaster. Her mom gets a job in Canada that's super exciting, and she's like, I'm not going to Canada. I'd rather live with dad. So the show is her moving in with her kind of like Lothario father who's loving and caring and overprotective, but is also definitely figuring out how to be an adult.
Yes.
While she has that kind of like preternatural adult energy to her that makes her feel like, who's the parent in this house sometimes?
Exactly.
With so many wonderful one-liners.
Yeah. And also too, like, I'm a daddy's girl, and, you know, they're in Baltimore. I'm in Maryland. Like, it just was so many connections.
You know, McKinley is a magnet school now with a wonderful performing arts program.
I've been telling Daddy I wanted to be a famous actress.
What kind of future is there in acting?
Daddy, I could sing, I can dance, I can rap. I'm gonna be the next J-Lo, but you can call me B-Lo, though. You know.
You can call me No-No, you know. Because I'm still not convinced.
But Daddy, look. You pursued your dream of making it in the NBA?
Yes, but when I blew out my knee, I still had my communications degree to fall back on.
But you lived your dream. Let me live mine.
So, you know, One-on-One was kind of like the life that I was living. Then I have a sister who's 9 years older than me. And so A Different World was always playing in the house, but I was much younger when A Different World was like in its prime.
Hi there. Hi, Whitley.
That's me.
I'm Kim Reese. I'm your roommate.
Oh, it's a pleasure to meet you, Kimberly. These are my friends, Ronald Johnson and Dwayne Wayne.
Dwayne Wayne. Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Good luck.
Good luck. What did you mean by that?
I'm sure he meant good luck here at Hillman, Kimberly.
And please, please call me Kim. Kimberly gets on my last nerve.
Well, Kim, you certainly have made yourself at home in my room.
Don't you mean our room?
Of course I meant that.
And so once I got accepted to Howard University, which is an HBCU, just like Hillman is in A Different World, which is the college that A Different World is centered around, I was like, I'm going to binge watch A Different World. Like, I'm going to get prepared for my HBCU experience. And it like blew my mind. I was like, this show is like one of the best shows ever. Like, it's so great. But it was kind of like my training wheels into my own HBCU experience. So both of them did a thing for me in high school and preparing to go to college, and that I was very intentional about. But they also really broadened my horizons as it pertained to my dreams and goals of being an actor, what type of actor I wanted to be, what types of programming I wanted to do, what types of shows I think that I really fit in. And I think the shows like One-on-One and A Different World, which I ended up doing Dear White People, which is very similar to A Different World, which is and playing a character basically that's Kimberly Reese, but in the Dear White People version. Like, who could have predicted that, right? Like, when I think about the kismet nature of that, I think it's pretty cool.
Everybody has hot dreams. I know every one of these girls in this dorm has.
How do you know that?
You don't hang out enough. You should. The things these girls come up with, they are wild.
Really?
And I bet what you dreamed wasn't half as rowdy as their stuff.
Well, you don't know that. As it happens, my dream was very vivid.
Way to go. Come on, tell me. Who was it? Was he famous? Terrence Trent D'Arby.
That braided mop.
I know. It was the guy at the party, the one you were making googly eyes at?
No.
Then who?
It's too silly.
I promise I won't laugh.
It was Dwayne.
Dwayne Wayne?
You said you weren't gonna laugh.
That's before you said it was Dwayne.
Leanne, it's like, did you feel that when you went on to your own HBCU experience, did you find it was like, wow, that show really honored the experience that this is, and actually they were getting this right.
1,000,000,000%.
Okay.
Billion
wow.
percent.
Okay,
yeah. It was fantastic. It's such a good and it's a show that is timeless. It will never it will always work. It's a classic show. And then on top of that, I end up going to do Dear White People. My showrunner on Dear White People is Yvette Lee Bowser, who was on a different world. She's a writer, producer, everything on a different world. That was like a different world to her was to her what Dear White People is to me. And then she ended up being my showrunner on Dear White People. Like, so it just goes to show, like, you just never know how the dots are connecting, but the dots are for sure connecting.
I remember, and like when I was growing up, like I was on a podcast with somebody once and we were talking about the movie Anaconda. And are you familiar with Anaconda?
I am.
Just well, and somebody on the podcast was remarking about how like notable it was that like this movie was led by a black actor in Ice Cube and a Latina woman in Jennifer Lopez, and there was like a couple guests on the show, and me and that other guest got to talking about how like actually like at this time that actually wasn't crazy. Like this was in the 1990s. Like one of my like touch point films for like women on screen is Set It Off. And like not clocking it till later, but like also that's one of my touch point films for like queer women on screen in like Queen Latifah, and just kind of even though like having men in that movie, like sort of Jada Pinkett Smith's entire vibe in that movie, and then her as Geraldine in Tales from the Crypt Demon Knight, like there was such a variety and texture and sort of unshowiness about the way it seems like Black life and Black families and Black circumstances could be depicted on screen in a way that now it feels like a lot of times, like, I feel like we're getting past this point, but it feels like an initiative that is being taken. And in the same way that it feels similar with, we're coming out of it too, I feel like with like queer experience on screen, where we're coming out of the like, and now it's Love, Simon. It's like, it's a coming out story, but a happy one. But like, we've always been doing coming out stories. So it kind of feels a little bit more like one of those versus like back in the 90s. Mike Nichols directs the goddamn Birdcage, and it's Robin Williams and Nathan Lane playing husbands running a drag bar in Miami, and this movie is a blockbuster that makes $180 million. And then we're like settling for being the GBF on television shows in the 2000s. So we go into that fallow period that I feel like you have referenced as well. And it's just like, it's kind of like who told who that they needed to start.
Like, why did it happen and how did it happen?
Yeah, like what confab of executives was like, we've let this get too far? Because it feels like there was an organized kibosh.
I agree.
Like,
it was strategic. It had to be. Because it was because to your point, Jordan, not only was it booming, it was doing really well.
It was successful. This was not niche.
Yeah. Oh, that's an investigation podcast we have to do going into.
Well, like the Wayans brothers, like in Living Color begins an empire of Wayans family members, and like one of the most worn out tapes in my house was Major Payne.
Oh my gosh, that's one of my husband's favorite movies. It's so good.
I love that movie. That, and then another one of our favorites was Low Down Dirty Shame.
Oh yeah,
with Keenan Ivory. And so it like these were movies that like did well, and they like broad appealed. Like I'm watching it in my house. You couldn't be goddamn more of a white family than mine. But like it was entertainment that seemed like entertainment had a permission to reach people on its terms of its like, this is a good dramatic movie. This is a funny movie that people will think is funny, as opposed to like, hey, you know, you might learn something about someone you've never met if you watch this film.
Yeah, I think it's because we were more focused on entertainment being entertainment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Everything didn't need to have a message. If it did have a message, that was great. We loved the message. But people were entertainers.
Yeah.
Entertainment for people who enjoy viewing entertainment. Like that's what it was. It's become almost like it's too controlled. It's too contrived now. You know what I mean? Like you said, there's like an initiative. There's quotas that people have to fill. And I think that's what makes it kind of took the heart out of it. I saw a quote the other day where Martin Scorsese was like, film is done. He just like, I'm like, maybe like, I'm paraphrasing it, but he basically was just like, it's over for us. Like film is, we have to get back. Cause his worry is that like the superhero stories are going to take over, and that when the next generation grows up, they're going to think that's just what movies are. Like movies are just Superman and Spider-Man going into the Spider-Verse or whatever. Yeah. And like Transformers or whatever. And like, no, there's like great dramatic stories, screenplays that people want to, and stories that people want to tell, that it's so much harder to get those things made right now.
It's time for a short break. Then we'll be back with more from Ashley. And at the end of the show, I will have one quick thing before I go about Mike Flanagan's latest Netflix venture, The Fall of the House of Usher. So stick around for that.
The human mind can be tricky. Your mental health can be complex. Your emotional life can be complicated. So it helps to talk about it. I'm John Moe. Join me each week on my show, Depresh Mode with John Moe. It's in-depth conversations about mental health with writers, musicians, comedians, doctors, and experts. Folks like Noah Khan, Sashir Zameda, and Surgeon General Vivek Murthy. We talk about depression, anxiety, trauma, imposter syndrome, and perfectionism. We have the kind of conversations that a lot of folks are hesitant to have themselves. Listen, and you won't feel as alone, and you'll have some laughs, too. Depresh Mode from Maximum Fun at MaximumFun.org or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey, this is Daniel Barwella, Technology and Data Specialist. I'm here with
Kira Gowan, Ad Operations Specialist, and we are both worker owners here at Maximum Fun.
October is National Co-op Month, so we're celebrating our brand new co-op and others with an event called Co-optober.
We've got special events all month long, starting with a live Q&A on YouTube, where Max Fun worker owners will answer your questions on Friday, October 6th, and much more to come.
We also want to tell you about some incredible limited edition merch exclusively available to Max Fun members until the end of October.
If you're already a member of Max Fun, you've shown that you care about our shows and what we do.
If you also want to help launch us into this new cooperative era and show off your support, go ahead and get yourself a hat, pin, or shirt. We worked with some of our favorite artists to make them really special.
For details on merch, all of our upcoming events like Meetup Day and more, visit MaximumFun.org/cooptober.
That's COOPTOBER.
Happy Co-optober!
Welcome back to Feeling Seen. I'm talking with Ashley Blaine Featherson-Jenkins, the host of Trials to Triumphs on Oprah's own podcast network. We've been talking about the TV characters she felt seen by and how they led her to her own career as a TV and film actor. One of the interesting things I've been seeing like people talk about on social media recently is kind of like bring back the 25 episode season.
Oh,
like, and like for better, like what, like I'm not gonna say that's like objectively the best thing, but I feel like shows that we watched right growing up, these like entertainment-based 25 episode shows where you could get writers' rooms getting like long-term employment. You had people getting good residuals checks, working for network TV. Like those things are very cool. But like there's an interesting fun that comes with the length of those kinds of seasons. Because I remember I was a big Pretty Little Liars fan. Huge. Maybe it's my favorite show of all time.
I didn't watch it.
It is a fucking mess. It's
incredible. One that I think I need to go back and watch that one. I think it's when I need to go back and binge it. Okay.
If you want blind entertainment, like you can go in for Pretty Little Liars.
Okay.
But there's like, it runs for 7 seasons and it's a mystery show about like a whodunit. And at it, like, it gets so crazy. And at the very end of the show, when the cast is doing their exit interviews, like with publications, they get asked about so many, like, what about this plot hole? What about this plot hole? And the ease with which so many of them, like the 4 women would be like, listen, I don't know,
I don't remember. I know.
And they're like, it's 25 episodes. We got to think of something. Like, just the idea that, like, hey, man, we had to pass. So maybe there's a crazy bottle episode in here sometimes, but the idea of like pure entertainment television and television that doesn't feel like it has to be a film, like it's really more of a 13-hour movie. It's like, but what if I want TV? Like, what then?
Yeah. I'm not mad at like the 25 episode situations. It just has to be good. Like, I think they used to be done better. I think
it's like we've lost. It's like we stopped flexing the muscle, so we lost it.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was going to say. Like, we only know how to write and act and produce 10 episodes. Like, that's all we know how to do now. When we add on 15 more, everybody's like, wait a minute. I don't know how to do this. Like, we have to kind of rework those muscles, I think, because I think oftentimes now when I see shows that have that many episodes, I always say, this has too many episodes.
Sure.
Like, this shouldn't have gone on this long. You know what I mean? Or this has too many seasons. Like, yikes. But before, what did we used to do? We used to be like, what? They're canceling this? We need more seasons.
Yeah, we're only on season 9. How could you cancel this?
Can you believe they canceled this after 13 seasons? Like, that's what we were doing.
You guys, there's only 200 episodes. What am I going to do when this is done?
That's how we used to be. Now we're like, oh, thank God it's a limited series. It's only 4 episodes. Woo! Like, like that's what we're doing now. So it's a tough landscape, Jordan. It's tough.
Well, and to what you were saying about, like we were talking about like sort of the curation aspect of like, and now we present to you good work of like representation. But like, do you feel like in your own creativity and what you want to make, do you feel like there is room for spontaneity and originality actually in execution? Or is that the rhetoric that we like to traffic in with like the notion of an industry welcoming more stories and points of view? Or do you find that you still have to punch up against a notion of like, no, I'm still like dealing with curators being like, oh, no, not that Black woman's story. We want that Black woman's story over there because that's the one.
This is how I feel. I feel like, oof, this is real.
I hope that's not an asshole question. I hope I'm not being like, hey, it's easy for you to ask me that, and now I have the fucking job of answering it. So
no, it's a fantastic question, and one that I actually am really like grateful that you asked me, and I'm excited to answer. I think the industry has now changed to where there is a lot of opportunity for the stories that myself and my peers want to tell, right? Even just off the strength of like, there's just a lot of places. There's Netflix, there's Hulu, there's Amazon, there's Amazon Freevee, there's all the networks, there's HBO, there's Mac. Like, there's so many places that are looking for content, right? The problem is that the biggest change in the industry is that it's not about what you have, it's about who you are.
Right, okay.
So I could have the next Game of Thrones, okay? Grey's Anatomy 2.0. Like, I could have this. But if I'm not popular enough, if I'm not enough of a name to them, if I don't have enough followers, it's either going to immediately knock me out of the running, like it's not even going to be considered, or they'll say, we'll take it, but not with you.
Right.
We got to put...
Good idea.
Yeah.
Put someone right else in the middle of that. Yeah.
And so I think it's a little misleading when people just say, create it yourself.
Yeah.
Like, just do it. Like, what do you mean?
The advice of go make something is like, fuck you.
It
like,
is.
Yes, but also, with what money? Like,
like you can't, even me, I cannot easily just walk into Amazon and say like, what's up, Amazon? Y'all trying to give me an overall deal? Like, what's up? I have these. I'm not saying that won't happen in my career. Amazon could call me tomorrow. I hope they do. But my point is, it's not, I think people make it seem like that. And to go back to 2011, 2012, when Lena and I did Hello Cupid, it was a different landscape. First of all, web series were really big at that time.
You're so right. That's such a big difference.
We created a web series. Going somewhere and saying, hey, I have this web series. Can you guys help me produce it? That is very different than going into Amazon or Netflix or HBO or whatever and saying, hey, do you want to buy my show? And it's a budget of $10 million an episode. And nobody really knows who I am.
Yeah.
I think it's misleading to people. Again, there are one-offs where it can happen, whatever. But again, that's what I'm talking about on my podcast. We're going into the journey, because what you really find out is that people that we're seeing have these opportunities are like, yeah, I've been trying to do this for 14 years.
Yeah.
They're not saying, you know what, I just wrote something that I thought was really good. And, you know, I had a friend that walked me into Amazon and they bought it for $17 million. That is not happening. It's just not. It's just not.
No, it is. And it's so like that. I feel like that's such an important detail that you mentioned about like the era of the web series. There was this period of between like the very end of the 2000s and the beginning of the 10s where like your Twitter feed could conceivably get you a writing job. Your web series could get you into a writer's room. Or I know multiple people who are like executives now at company or like junior executives who were like, yeah, I made a web series and a studio reached out to me. They were like, we love your idea. And that like got them was the thing that got them in the door. And that is not now.
Lena Waithe had a successful web series before she had successful television shows. Yeah. That's a fact. I was starring in a successful web series before I was starring in a successful TV show. These are facts. Issa Rae. We were doing it at the same time. We did crossover episodes. That's how I know Issa. Like,
right.
It is. And at that time, it could be a platform for you. It cannot now. Nobody, if you walked into somewhere and was like, I created a web series, or I created a spec film or something, people would be like, no thanks. Don't want it. Don't care.
I know a woman who went in for she went in for an interview for a job as a late night writer at one of the big late night shows, and she had her packet. Like, she got the interview for a family friend, she got through Connection, she had her whole writer's packet, and she was gonna hand it over to them. They're like, no, we know your Twitter feed. We don't need that. Got hired, worked on the show for over a decade. And that window of time was so real, but that window is closed now. It does not work the same way.
It's closed. So it's about popularity now. It's how we're seeing like TikTokers or whatever star in television shows. It's because the networks are looking and the studios are looking at dollars. How much money can we make off of this person? Not how talented is this person. And I think because they're so talented, this will be a hit. I'm willing to bet on this person. They're not betting on people in the same way.
I think people think podcasting requires less than it does. Like, podcasting that's well done. I think they really do think it's just like, hey, you show up and everything like just happens and like, hey, I encourage everybody to have a podcast. I think it's a wonderful way to spend time with your friends, and only do it if you want to do it, not because you think it's going to go anywhere. It's just something you enjoy. Yeah. But like a professional podcast enterprise. But like, there is a wonderful aspect of self-determination about it. And I only mention that as a preface because I wanted to ask you, when you were conceiving of your podcast, what was that feeling for you at the time you were germinating the idea for Trials and Triumphs? What was it that you were like, I want to do this for me, and this is what it will nourish for me to put this out in the world?
Yeah, you know, and I'm happy that we're kind of talking about the journey, and we've talked about Hello Cupid and whatever, because I always have, and I will continue to always create what I want.
Yeah.
I'm creating out of a void that I'm feeling all the time. And that's always my advice for creators, for people that want to embark on creating their own stuff, is don't create what you already see. Don't try to just replicate something. Create what you know you don't see, but you know you want. Because that means that there's other people that probably need it too. you know? And so that's what I did with Trials to Triumphs. I created the podcast that I so desperately wanted. I wanted a place where I could go, and when I was feeling low or needed to pick me up or needed a good story of inspiration, I knew that I could count on it. And I knew that something in each episode would provide me with a little pep in my step to keep going. And that's what I wanted. And that's what I wanted to provide to offer rather to other people. And, you know, my manager was the one who had the idea for me to start a podcast. And my response was, who would listen to my podcast? Mike, that's insane. Like literally.
I'm glad that you're practical enough to ask that question, because I was like, oh, I can hear the sound of my own voice and I get to ask people questions about their feelings. I'm excited.
No, I was like, Mike, are you insane? You know, and you have to have a manager. Like, he was like, I have this idea. I think you should have a podcast. And I was like, oh my God, that sounds great. Why would I have a podcast? That's insane. He was like, why wouldn't you? He was like, you have a voice. People love your voice. And I don't mean like the actual like sound of my voice. I mean like what I have to say. And like, I had already been using my voice in that way, but not thinking that I should have a podcast. And I literally was like, yeah, Mike. Okay. So like, what's the podcast going to be about? And he was like,
okay, Mike, you got all these ideas. Let's hear this idea, Mike.
I was like, okay, Mike. And he was like, I don't know. That's for you to come up with and like click. It was like so dramatic. It was like, bye. And like you get off the phone and I'm just like left holding the phone.
You're like, did you find a landline to give that click at the end? What was that? Are you kidding me? Did you find a rotary phone for a dramatic effect?
But it was one of the best things he could have ever done for me, because the truth is, I do think at that time in my life, I had a more limited mindset.
Sure.
You know, I had been kicked down a lot. I was like, oh, another thing for people to tell me no about. Like, another thing for people to just reject. Like, I don't know that I want to do that. Like, something that I know is going to be good, but everyone else is going to be like, yeah, you know what? Like, this sounds great, but we're just not looking for something like this at this time. But I didn't want to do that. But I prayed about it. I sat with it for a while and I realized it's bigger than me and it matters and it's good and somebody's going to take it. And it was a journey. You know what I mean? It was not fast. It was a journey and it was at so many places and they didn't know what to do, or COVID happened. So many things happened, but I feel like it's exactly where it's supposed to be. I'm in the second season and we're firing on all cylinders. And most importantly, we're changing lives. It's the messages that I get where people are like, you know, ABFJ, I don't know if you're going to see this. I always do though. So, but I'm always like, I see this. Thank you so much. But I don't know if you're going to see this, but like, you changed my life. Keep going. I just want you to know this podcast really means something to me. I shared this with my friend and she called me crying. Whatever it is, though, that it keeps me going. And the best part, and I hope you feel this way too, Jordan, is that like, I get so much from my podcast.
It makes me so happy every single week. Right. What a joy. What an honor to get to talk to people about like the truth of their experience and who they are.
It's just such a gift. So like, I just got chills thinking about that because I love that you get it. You understand. And like, I know the way that I feel right now on your podcast. So
I hope it's positive.
It's very positive. And
you're like, and by that, I mean, I am eager to get out of here.
No. But you know, ultimately I feel seen. So that means that you're doing exactly what you set out to do, Jordan, and you're doing it authentically, and you're creating a space where I and others feel vulnerable enough to have this type of exchange with you. And that's always what I'm trying to do over at Trials to Triumph. So kudos to you, Jordan. This is like, I love being here and I love feeling seen. I really do.
Well, I can't I can't contrive a better conclusion question than that. So I this brings us up enough to time where I just feel like I have to just let that be the bow on it, and just thank you again for your time and for joining us. Like, this became one of those kind of conversations about conversation, and I'm really glad it got to do that, because it's a nice surprise every once in a while when those come along.
Yeah, no, this was a gift. This was a great way to start my day, Jordan, and hopefully you'll have me back. I would love to come back.
I would, if you're sitting and you're in one of those quiet moments and you're like, you know what, I do have a villain that I love.
Yes, I will let you know.
I want to know where you aligned with the dark side. But just for today, thank you so much for the light and for the conversation. I really appreciate you coming
Thank you, Jordan. I had a blast.
Thanks so much to Ashley Blaine Featherson-Jenkins. Catch up with Trials to Triumphs wherever you find your podcasts. And now, one quick thing before I go about, maybe your favorite, really possibly my favorite, Mike Flanagan. Just can't say enough about the guy. He is coming down to what is at least close to the end, if not the very end, of his deal with Netflix. This was pre-strike and things kind of get rearranged during a force majeure event like this. But Mike Flanagan signed an overall deal with Amazon last year. I would imagine they're not letting the guy go. I kind of think that one's going to still kick around. So he will be making work under the banner of Amazon now. But out on Netflix shortly, we will have, I think, probably my favorite thing he has done in the TV zone since The Haunting of Hill House. He has made The Fall of the House of Usher into a miniseries. It is a melting pot of the works of Edgar Allan Poe. Obviously, The Fall of the House of Usher is its own standalone tale, but this is a melange of Poe. References, stories, characters under the framework of the House of Usher. And it's got the Flanagan things you love. It's got monologues. It has got beautiful direction and cinematography, horror storybooks come to life, lensed and directed by his longtime creative partner at points, Mike Fimignari. He has got directing credits on this. He has come into that chair working with Mike, not just DPing anymore. And so many of your Flana faves. There is his wife, the resplendent Kate Siegel, playing Camille L'Espagne, family publicist and spin master. There's Henry Thomas back again. This time he's Frederick Usher, one of the kids. Mary McDonnell's here as the sister to Roderick Usher, Madeline Usher. You've got Annabeth Gish popping in back here again. Bruce Greenwood. My God, this man is an all-timer. Bruce Greenwood always shows up and delivered. Samantha Sloyan, who was absolutely haunting in Midnight Mass, is here as Tamerlane Usher. Friend of this show, Rahul Kohli, as Napoleon Usher. If you watch The Midnight Club, you'll recognize Ruth Codd. She's in here as the youngest imaginable stepmom to all the Usher kids. There's Easter eggs abound, really, for Poe enthusiasts and Flanagan enthusiasts. And you know what? I'm going to say chief among them all. One of the best things about Mike Flanagan is how much he understands and respects the range and power and eternal hotness of Carla Gugino. And Carla Gugino is a sort of thread-weaving character in this show who really rains down hellfire on the House of Usher and is sort of the face of their doom. And she gets to do such interesting things in this part. They could almost be sort of read as like a femme fatale, which Carla Gugino is so outfitted for. But there are interesting aspects of how she is utilized in certain character stories where she gets to do very interesting, even physical acting that's sort of unexpected. This is, as I've been telling people when I'm talking about it, if you've wanted to see Mike Flanagan's take on Succession, that is what The Fall of the House of Usher is. I'm so excited to see what Flanagan does under the Amazon deal. I'm wondering how that might change the flavor of what he makes. I'm wondering how that might change, I don't know, resources, access, something. Like something's got to be different while also maintaining that deeply emotional core of any Flanagan project. Giving Carla some of the best work of her career, telling you, you know what? Zach Gilford is not just Matt Saracen from Friday Night Lights, and giving him good dramatic roles to chew on. And Mark Hamill is in this as maybe the most unsettling character Mark Hamill has ever played, the shark lawyer, Arthur Pym. So, yeah, I feel like this it's like a repertory that doesn't make you feel icky sometimes, like Ryan Murphy's cast does, like where he's just like kind of icky and like, you know, we like the American Horror Story over here. We like playing in the mud and the muck of the Murphyverse. But like, if you want to go feel good, if you want to go just like slip into a warm bath of emotionally fraught and soul crushing horror stories, Mike Flanagan's your guy. And he, you know what, a thing he's going to do, he's going to make a show gay. And there is a wonderful gayness that is very sort of unfussy and specific and nuanced in this show that is so welcome and so beautiful in the ever-expanding academy of Mike Flanagan players. So, yeah, that's really fun. Go check out Follow the House of Usher. It's going to be on Netflix. Let's send Mike and that streamer out with a bang as he moves on to, I'm going to say, some greener pastures. But that is our show. We did it! You can follow us on Twitter at FeelingSeenPod or send us an email at feelingseen@maximumfun.org. If you want to follow me, I'm JorCrew on Twitter. Our theme music is by Andrew Epen. The show is produced by Marissa Flaxbart. Our senior producers are Kevin Ferguson and Laura Swisher, and this is a production of Maximum Fun.
Maximum Fun,
a worker-owned network
of artist-owned shows.
Supported
directly
by you.